So my passion for healthy children and really our creating the best lives and healthiest lives we can have stems from a Bachelor of Science, and that really gave me a great understanding of the body and what really makes us tick. After that, I did a graduate diploma in business and went into the corporate world for almost 20 years. And it was through that time that I had a very fulfilling career. But once I had children, it wasn't fulfilling me, and my worlds weren't colliding. So I ended up leaving and pursuing my training as a holistic health coach with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, a school based in New York, which was fantastic training. And it was all done online, which was a wonderful way to learn, and which is hence the reason I've kind of created Our Happy Children, especially for busy mums and parents. To be able to learn from online is fantastic, and it also gives you a great opportunity to create a very supportive community, which is my intention with Our Happy Children as well. So now I've got a thriving health coaching business that's been running for about 3 years now, and steadily been growing. I recently started working with a naturopath here in WA called Remedy, and I've got 2 healthy, happy kids of my own, Chloe and Ben, who are now 8 and 6. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Chloe later, as her story has really spurred me on in terms of my passion for sharing this knowledge. And so I'd say, as an example, working with my clients, 95%, if not 100% of them improve their immune system, go through winter with fewer colds, less doctor's visits, purely based on better food and lifestyle choices, very sort of non-interventionary methods, just which is fantastic. Skin conditions improve. Digestive issues is a big one. You know, things like bloating, reflux, irritable bowel. People can see a really big difference in the way they improve their food and lifestyle choices. And we have a special guest on the call today, Yolandi Gustavino, who's going to share with us her experience with her 9-year-old daughter, and which I'm very grateful for. And Yols has been a great inspiration for me, and it's wonderful to have her here to share her story this morning. And the other big thing is stress, and what I'm going to share this morning in this practical 3-step formula really keys to help us manage our stress, particularly as busy parents with children. But it's and I think that's a lot of what I offer is the support in guiding people in doing that. So we've got a lot to cover in this morning, and I'll go back now to the presentation, and so we get started. But what I'm going to cover today is really the background and lessons that I've learned on the importance of establishing a really good bedrock for optimum health in our kids. It's so fundamental. And then through that, my practical 3-step formula that I've created for a thriving, healthy and happy family. And then, as I mentioned, we've got Yols, who's going to share her experience with us, and also a special offer that I'd like to offer and give to you as participants on my webinar this morning in regards to my e-course. And then just run through a little bit about how the e-course works, and with time at the end also for some questions. So there's Chloe, my 8-year-old, which was taken on the holidays this summer with Tigger, our very special puppy dog. Before I get to Chloe, I just wanted to, if you've got Facebook, if you have anything open on your desktop, if you could please just close it down so that we have minimal distractions and our call is as productive and worthwhile as it can be, and you can really got the opportunity to absorb the content that I'm going to share, and that you can get the most out of it. That would be great. And if you do have questions, please just make a note of them and we'll get to them at the end of the call. So Chloe is one of the the key reasons I'm so passionate about Our Happy Children and why I created it. The other couple of important reasons are the number of confusing messages, and a lot of in the marketplace, and a lot of my clients, when they come to me, they just are confused and they just want to know what's right. And we are constantly bombarded with these messages daily. There's a lot of confusion, and there really doesn't need to be. And my third reason is the statistics for the future of our health, especially in our kids, and they are quite horrifying. And I firmly believe that they don't need to be that way either. So let's get to Chloe. Chloe was always a happy, healthy child, doing really well. And actually, I should also say, if you do have questions or need to say something during the call, you can raise your hand, use the hand function and raise your hand. And as your hand is still up, if you wouldn't mind just clicking on that and putting it down, because I think yeah, that's great. Thank you. So Chloe, she was a really happy, healthy child, doing well at school, and there were no obvious concerns for her health. But at the age of 5, I noticed that her foot really wasn't, well, it had seemed to stop developing. One day as she was walking on the beach, I noticed she ran and her foot was curving in unnaturally. I didn't really worry too much. I just sort of shrugged it off. But then we went to buy school shoes at the end of the holidays, and her foot was almost a size smaller. This wasn't the case previously. So over the next 8 months, I saw every specialist imaginable: chiropractors, specialist pediatricians, podiatrists, orthopedic surgeons, and even a neurologist who prescribed an MRI, which didn't come up with anything. But to be honest, at that time, the neurologist diagnosed that Chloe had a mild form of cerebral palsy, and which you can imagine was quite upsetting for us. But her advice was to just keep doing some physio, and there really was nothing else that we could do, which many of the other specialists had come up with as well. It was a really difficult time. We were frustrated because we couldn't get the answers. And I worried in particular for Chloe and her future, her self-esteem of having a deformed foot, as many people referred to it as, or her flipper foot, as we called it. And perhaps you've had a similar experience, I'm sure, where all you want to do is just protect your kids and make it right for them. And I instinctively knew that there had to be a cause, and I really didn't want to take no for an answer, which was also difficult, to not accept what the experts were telling us. But with further research and other forms of treatment, and of course some really good nutrition, we're delighted that Chloe's foot now is growing. It's got life, and she's on a wonderful path of healing. And she in herself is more confident and a much more vital girl. But up until then, I would never have had any concern that anything was not as it should have been. So this experience has made me so passionate about helping parents optimize their family's health, and to really support them in finding their own answers. And in a little while, Yols is going to share her own experience in this, which is a great story. But as children, we're frequently told no, and mostly for good reasons. So when we're older, it can be really difficult to actually question authority. It becomes second nature, but it doesn't always serve us that well. And this has been one of my most enlightening lessons in optimizing my family's health. It hasn't happened overnight, but now I question most of what I'm told in the interests of my family's health, because honestly, as parents, I don't think anybody cares. Well, I know that no one cares more than we do. And if I hadn't questioned, I just know that Chloe and Benj wouldn't be the vital, healthy kids that they are today. So that's why I created Our Happy Children, really to support parents who instinctively know that they can do more to optimize their family's health, but don't know where to start. And I share a lot more about this in my e-course. But I believe this really is the first step in creating a healthy, thriving children and family happiness. As I've shown in this 3-step peace plan I have. So empowered health is really the first step. And if there's one message that you take away from the call today, it's really not to take no for an answer, to trust your instinct when it comes to your family, to kind of take a step back and and look at things more objectively and do your own research. Really be curious and ask questions. You know, it may not be something like the story that we've experienced with Chloe. It might be you going to the supermarket and buying a product. Just to read the labels and, you know, don't be convinced because something says it's organic necessarily means it's healthy and the best thing for you and your family. You know, read the ingredients. And because there really is no one who cares more about your family's health than you do. So just on that, think about how you can take more responsibility for your family's health today. What do you instinctively know could be better? It might be something that's been niggling away at you, or you just kind of know deep down that could be better. And you know, try something different, experiment and see what happens, see how the family or your children respond. So the other reason I created Our Happy Children is the bleak current and future statistics that are out there for children's health. And I'm hoping everybody can still hear and see me well enough. So my intention here is not to frighten you or to scare you, but really just to make you aware of where we are at the moment. Chronic illness like cancer, type 1 diabetes, allergies, autoimmune diseases, digestive diseases are all rapidly increasing. And often most recognised as adult illnesses are now becoming more common in our kids. And these statistics here for Australia, 1 in 5 high school students are overweight or obese. And if this weight gain continues, the World Health Organization has forecast that by 2020, 80% of all Australian adults and a third of our kids will be overweight or obese. 1 in 20 kids suffer from a potentially fatal food allergy, with a sharp increase in the last 10 years. 1 child in every 50 has a dairy allergy, and the prevalence of diseases like eczema and hay fever have tripled in the last 30 years. But the biggest rise, which is the biggest concern, is not in adults. The biggest rise is in children under the age of 5. And then 1 in 3 children will have digestive disorders like bowel disease, celiac disease, Crohn's disease, gluten intolerance, reflux, the list goes on. And cancer, the second leading cause of death in Australia. But according to the World Health Organization, those rates are expected to soar in the next 15 years. And worryingly, increasingly, the increasing incidence that's going to be seen in our children. And then the other one, which has been in the news a bit recently, is mental disabilities, are forecast to be the leading cause of disability globally by 2020. And around 1 in 5 Australians has a form of mental disorder at some time in a 12-month period. 25% of these people are aged between 16 to 24 years. So that's our kids in the next, 10, maybe 5 or 10 years. And there's some great strategies and information that to get a healthy mind and to get our kids in a really safe, good place, that they're not part of those statistics. It doesn't have to be this way. When we adopt healthy food and lifestyle choices, we feel better, we think better, we're healthier and happier. And you'll know this for yourself in your own experience. And these choices actually affect our genes. When we can switch our genes on and we can switch them off with the food and lifestyle choices we're making. It's relatively new science. It's been around for about 20 years and it's called epigenetics, which is really exciting. And there's a brilliant book written by Dr. Bruce Lipton called The Biology of Belief. And he's a cell biologist and he gives a fantastic overview on the process of epigenetics. It's very empowering and to know that we do have control of our health. So which really is the basis of my course, Our Happy Children, and supporting you in making the best food and lifestyle choices. It takes years for our bodies to finally present with a chronic illness. For many years prior, it's giving us little signs, it's out of balance, might be a skin rash, difficulty sleeping, less energy, or those digestive-related issues. Little signs or bigger signs that things aren't working as well as they should be. Prevention really is the cure. And what I mean by that is by integrating some of these great food and lifestyle choices and strategies, you are sitting in the top 2 to 3% of the world when it comes to healthy living. And I have clients on this call, so you know that you're in there in that top 2 to 3%. As you practice this now, you are establishing the bedrock of health that's so fundamental to our children's longevity. You turn back the hands of time. You have more nourishing relationships with your partner and your kids, and healthier teens and adults, which is so important. And it's far better to invest now as their kids. They're much more responsive to these changes, and it's less expensive and easier to deal with these issues earlier on. Which brings me to the second step in my formula, which is primary food. When we think of food, we most often think of the food we physically consume, but optimum health is far more than that. Primary food is a food that really nourishes us. It's more than what we find on our plate. Healthy relationships, regular movement, a fulfilling career, and a nourishing spiritual practice are more likely to satisfy our hunger for life. This is our primary food. When primary food is balanced and satiated, our life feeds us, making what we eat secondary. Remember when you're a kid and you're playing outside and you're having loads of fun, and suddenly your mum says dinner's ready, but you're not hungry. The passion for play takes all our attention. We are totally absorbed. Sometimes when we're fed not by food, but by the energy in our lives, whereas something like modern nutrition, carbohydrates, proteins, fruits and veggies are really just one source of nourishment, which I consider to be secondary food. And secondary foods, while they nourish our bodies, they're not able to give us the deep joy and the meaning or the fulfillment that primary food provides. We hunger for play, for fun, touch, romance, intimacy, achievement, success, self-expression, leadership, adventure, spirituality, whatever it is. All these elements are essential forms of nourishment. And the extent to which we're able to incorporate them determines how enjoyable and worthwhile our lives feel. So when we use secondary food as a way to alleviate or suppress our hunger for primary food, the body and the mind suffer. Weight gain is just one of the consequences. And this is even in our children who are under a lot of stress. They can put on weight and find it hard to budge. Diet-related disorders like heart disease, cancer, obesity, high blood pressure and diabetes are national epidemics. And one of the main reasons is because we are stuffing ourselves with secondary foods when we are really starving for primary food. So if you're not getting the primary food you need, eating all the food in the world just won't satisfy that hunger. So just think about, for a moment, what gives you great energy on a primary level. And look at your kids, they give us great clues, and really encourage that within them. It could be chatting with old friends, listening to some beautiful music, walking on the beach, going for a massage, engaging with learning, whatever it is that you might be passionate about. For me, I love walking and running at the beach when the weather's good, but mostly I really get inspired and energized talking with like-minded people, learning more about personal health and well-being. I recently went to a conference and it was 3 days. It was all about health, nutrition, well-being. I went with some other health coaches and I came back after 3 days, long nights. It was full on, very intensive. But I came back and people thought I'd been on holiday and commented on how refreshed I looked. Because for me, it's just such an energizing thing to do. So really, take some time just to think about what gives you great energy, what makes you happy, and that you can do more regularly. Which brings me to the third step in the formula for thriving children and happy families. And it's you. It's all about us. And it's not a topic that many of us are quite often very comfortable with. But honestly, this is fundamental. Without a happy mum, it's very hard to have a truly happy family. Taking time out for you is critical, but for many of us can be quite foreign, unfortunately. Self-care and love, something that I go over in Module 1 of the e-course, Our Happy Children. It's the first key principle because it's the most important and fundamental for happiness. We must first love ourselves before we're capable of loving anybody else. And we've heard this, we're kind of familiar with it, but it's it can be very hard to practice. And as the saying goes, love really does make the world go round. The mood we're in, how we feel about ourselves, totally affects others around us. It links in with primary food, because when we demonstrate this self-care or self-love, we prioritize primary food. Self-care tells the universe we're important and we value ourselves. The universe then works to support us in achieving our desires. And likewise, when you don't put yourself first, the universe will support you in that too. So this really is a fundamental part of making better choices and being healthy, and especially within the family and for our kids. And it acts as a great role model for our kids. It helps lower our stress and, really importantly, sets a good example for our children. So as they take on more responsibilities and navigate through life, you've shared with them already as role models the tools they need to manage whatever life throws at them better. But the problem is, and I found this myself, it's one of the hardest things I've had to learn, is to not feel guilty about taking time for myself, especially as a mum and especially with younger kids who are so much more dependent on us. We don't have time for that. I can manage, it's not a problem. But and also you can maybe feel a bit selfish, but it's not being selfish. It recognises that today, compared to our parents or grandparents, there's a loss of community support. And as the quote goes, it takes a village to raise a child, but we really lost touch with that concept. The support structures that traditionally were available are not available to us today. We're busier, our parents are busier. It's really difficult to create those support structures, but it's so important. And for some of us, our lives can be quite isolating as well. So now more than ever, we really need to nurture ourselves and put ourselves first without that guilt. For me, I had to learn to ask for help from my family and friends, something that I really didn't do much of previously. It's definitely put me in a happier place, and where I can manage the busyness of life much more simply. And also, just to take a massage or take time out to have a long bath. It's really, really important, and it does give a good example to your kids. So perhaps, take a few seconds now to think about what you can do today or tomorrow to be kind to yourself and demonstrate some self-care. Pop it in your diary, make it happen, and then really take notice of how you feel, your energy, your mood, what's different. And try and incorporate it regularly. So now I'd like to introduce you to Yolandi. And Yols, I'm just going to take you off mute so that you can talk to us. Can you hear me, Yols? Can you?
Yep. Hi, KP.
Hi. How are you going?
Great.
Good. Yols, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
And I was keen for you to share your experience with your daughter, Neve. And if you could just give us some background, perhaps, on what was concerning you before we end up working together, some of the symptoms that were worrying you.
Okay. What happened is this happened about 3 years ago when Neve was about 8. I mean, she was a very happy, healthy girl, full of lots of energy, very good at sport and always a good eater as well. And then very quickly she developed an issue with eating, and particularly with eating breakfast in the morning. She'd suddenly say she'd feel sick. She felt like she was going to vomit and had gone lie on the couch. And so straight away we took her to the GP. GP looked down her throat and couldn't see anything, but even so prescribed antibiotics and sent us away. So thinking it was probably a throat infection or something like that. So we put on the antibiotics. Within a couple of days she was just about fainting and even having more of these symptoms of needing to vomit. So I really started panicking and rushed her back to the GP. And he got us in very quickly to a gastroenterologist, pediatric. No, not sorry, KP, you might have to help me. Anyway, specialist.
Yeah. So you had a 12-month wait list or something, was that right?
No, that was a little bit later down the track. The first specialist we went to see, actually that's right, the first specialist we got into was an ear, nose, throat specialist
Yes.
who is it an endoscopy where he put a thin
Yes.
black tube down her throat.
Yeah. Similar. Yes. I'm not sure, but
Anyway, yeah, so that so again we're on to our next specialist. He did this procedure. I mean, I was panicking, of course, but Neve was very brave. But he
yeah.
put this thin black tube down her throat, couldn't see anything at all, and but went on to say that he suspected that Neve had reflux. And so the next step was to go and see a paediatric gastroenterologist, of which there is only one in the state, and there's an 18-month waiting list
Yeah.
to see her. But in the meantime, we were sent off to see another GP who had a special interest. At first, I thought it was a specialist, but it turned out it was a special interest in paediatric gastroenterology, and we had to wait 3 or 4 months to go and see him as well. But
Right.
in the meantime, we caught up with KP. Shall I keep talking, KP?
Yeah. No. Good. No. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yours. Yeah. Just
In the
to.
meantime, sorry.
Yes. No. Great.
Yeah. In the meantime, we'd caught up with KP, and KP was just starting
For those who
out
may
with her
not know
business.
KP, that's me. Obviously.
Sorry.
That's okay, yours.
um, but KP was just starting out her business. She'd just finished her integrative nutrition course, and I happened to mention the issue that we had with Neve. And Kate said that I might, she just very quietly said, I've got a few ideas. And I didn't think anything of it. And she went away. But afterwards, I thought, gee, I've got nothing to lose. I've got a very unsure feeling about going to see the doctors, but I've got no medical knowledge at all myself. My brother and sister-in-law are both doctors, but it's talking to them about these things sort of
Yeah.
don't get very far. But anyway, so I called KP and just said, how do you think that you could help us? So I think we were possibly one of
You
KP's
were.
first
Yeah, yeah. One of my.
clients. And so KP started by saying literally breaking down what do we have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I've always been, very fit and thought, I was a very healthy person. But when we actually broke it down, what we had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and KP starting to tell us, all about these different foods, I was horrified actually, and a little bit embarrassed, I suppose, at what I was feeding the kids for
Yeah,
lunch in particular and
I mean,
breakfast.
it's a really good point, yours. But I think that the kind of embarrassment, guilt, but it's more because you just weren't aware. You thought you were doing the right thing, which is understandable.
Exactly. But anyway, just to cut a long story short, in the meantime, we did go to see the GP who had the special interest in gastroenterology, and the path that he was sending us down was to go and have these x-rays, Neve to swallow this liquid, which he couldn't even really explain to me what it was. And again, me not having any medical knowledge, was very worried about it. And having x-rays and the whole works. And I asked him what I thought were a couple of very simple questions like, what are the side effects of this liquid? And to be honest, I felt that he got nervous, just the simple questions that I was asking. So I had a very unsure feeling. But in the meantime, we were having regular catch-ups with Kate and making fairly radical changes quickly, which was difficult with the kids in the beginning. But I suppose I was very determined to to
Make a
incorporate
difference.
a lot healthier diet. And within less than 2 months, Neve was completely better. So we didn't carry on, with the GP and going down the conventional path. We didn't need to. And over the past 3 years, because Kate's a very good friend of ours, we have every time we see KP, there's more and more to learn, but we're constantly making these changes and improving our diet to the point now where the kids, I mean, even this week, you wouldn't believe it, Neve was actually even asking to take green smoothie in her water bottle to school.
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's great. Well, that's great. And she's, she's a fantastic girl. But I really have to commend you on the kind of commitment that you made to it, and you got the results as a consequence. It's fantastic. It's really such a great story, Yols. Is there anything else you would like to share to the group just before we open up for questions?
I suppose, like you say, KP, is just always be curious. There's always more and more to learn, and to always be curious, but also not to be daunted in the beginning with how much information there is to learn, and just it's okay just to take little steps and to make little changes, and to be comfortable with those changes, and then gradually those changes become part of your everyday life. So then you go on and put more changes in place. And if you keep, if you're really, as the mum and I suppose the provider of the food in the home, if you're very passionate, what I think is that if you're very passionate about the health and what you're doing, I think the kids, and maybe your husband as well, that's what happened in our case, will take those changes on board and start to really enjoy the food that
Yes.
you're eating, and
Yeah,
so
it's
much more.
really, really good advice, yours. It is step by step, just adding things in and not about kind of depriving, but taking it slowly. And then all of a sudden it is kind of a way of life, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
So now, thanks so much, Jules. Really appreciate that. It's you've just very inspiring to me, and you've done an amazing job with your family. It's fantastic. No, honestly. So now I'll put you on mute again, and then actually I'll leave you open because people might want to ask questions to you too. So if anybody has any questions, if you could put your hand up, and then I can open up the line so that you can ask your question. And if there aren't questions, that's fine too. Or you can write a note and ask your question if you don't would prefer not to speak. So just let me know. Yes, Vanessa, I'll take you off mute. Hi, Vanessa.
Green. Yeah.
Hi.
Just with the how are you?
Good, great to
Just
have
a
you
quick
here.
with the green smoothies.
Yes.
My husband and I have them every morning, and I've got a 16-month-old, and he's always wanting to have some as well.
Yes.
Is it okay for kids that age to have like your spirulina, maca, all that within it? Or?
What greens? What other greens do you put in there?
I've got kale, so we put in kale. So pretty much it's a banana, kale, almond milk. I put a date in mine,
Yes.
and then we've got a green superfood powder that we put into it,
Fantastic.
which is just the spirulina, maca,
I think
and chia
there's
seed.
look, I think there's if he wants to try it, there's nothing wrong with that. I would monitor
Yep,
him because kale is a very strong food, so it's pretty powerful. If you
yep.
notice any changes, rashes or the runny nappies and things like that, then I'd probably cut back. But it's
Okay.
really nice for him to get used to it. The other thing to consider is that kids, the enzymes for certain foods don't fully develop until they're about 5. So you just might want to
Okay.
be just keep an eye on it. It may not be the case for him if he's already having some of these foods. So,
Yep.
but just see how he responds. If you can get him
Okay.
used to it and enjoying it, that's fantastic.
Yep. All right. Excellent.
Great,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Vanessa. I'll just unmute you now. And Nikki, I'm just unmuting you. Hey, Nick.
Hi, hi, KP. How are you?
Great, so nice to have you here.
Quick question, and
Yes,
it's part of a more detailed discussion longer term, but the rise in allergies interests me. I have
yeah.
a 7-year-old who's the only one he's nut allergic, and
Uh-huh.
then I've recently developed hay fever, having never had allergies in my life.
Yeah.
So I was curious to know, have you had much experience with that and any of the general trends as well?
Um, Hay fever and some allergies can be food related, and
Mhm.
a lot of our immunity lies in the gut, Nick. So, I would work pretty and focus on getting a healthy gut, which means repopulating and making sure the gut bacteria are in balance and there's kind of no overgrowth of bad bugs, basically. So that can be something, particularly as it's you've only recently developed it. When did your 7-year-old, what is
George.
it? George. So when did he develop the nut allergy?
He seems to have had it since he was young. So
Yeah.
I was force feeding him walnuts one day, and he complained about his throat feeling funny.
Oh, oops.
But
Not so funny.
since he's not so funny. Since then, he's been tested, and there's a range of tree nuts he's allergic to. So
Right.
and he's got an EpiPen and the whole bit.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know whether that's.
It's hard, but for you, Nick, I think because it's been a late onset, then I would really look further and and look at what might be out of balance, and that could be triggering your hay fever.
Mm-hmm.
And then for George, Yols herself has a little boy allergic to nuts, and I don't know, Yols, if you've come across anybody who's actually got over nut allergy. Have you, Yols?
Well, actually, my nephew was highly allergic to nuts as well, but he seems to only be allergic to peanuts now, I think, or he doesn't seem to be as allergic. So he's about 10 now, and he seems to have grown out of it a little bit. He doesn't like the taste, and he doesn't like eggs so much as well, and I think that's associated. But our son Lloyd still seems to be highly allergic to all nuts, which I find really upsetting. But and I think KP, you mentioned that there are possibly ways of overcoming the allergy, but it's obviously a very sort of time-consuming process.
So Nick, just on that, you might want to look at the Paleo Diet, and there is a woman who does a blog, which I'll try and track down and send to you, who believes that she has got over her son's nut allergy by adopting a paleo diet, which is basically, no refined foods, very little grains, lots of good fats and proteins. Okay. So there's something there. Okay. Thanks, Nick.
Great. Thank you.
All right. I'll just go to Georgie now. Hey, hi, Georgie. Nice to have you here.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. I just like to ask a quick question, and this is obviously going to be a long conversation, but with Will and Tim both being dyslexic, is there, and should I explore that whole path of food related to the brain and brain function, etc., etc.? We talk a lot about, the gut, and that's where we hold, a lot of our health and it's related. But I suppose I'm more interested in that avenue. Is there a whole world out there that I should be exploring?
Oh, Georgie, to be honest, I think so. It's the brain and the gut are intimately linked.
Yeah.
And it's a gradual process. You could do it step by step, but definitely worth exploring, and will help the whole family.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be in touch with you.
Trust your instinct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Georgie. I'll just go back to Nikki again quickly.
Yep.
Thanks, George. Hey, Nick. Hello.
Oh, I must have
you've still got
tipped
your
the
hand
by
up.
accident. Sorry, guys.
Okay, no worries. All right, thanks. Well, I think that's it.
Sorry, I'll put it down. There we go.
Thanks, Nick. Just unmute you now. So we'll get, I'll just go on and finish the presentation. It looks like that's all the questions. And hopefully we haven't taken up too much of your time, but the e-course, Our Happy Children, covers 5 core principles. I look at in the first week, that really important area of love, communication, emotion, and the healing power of connection. It's talking about really setting up the scene for success throughout the program, establishing some fundamental principles to make the other modules that fall into place, and simple strategies that really help amplify the expression of love in the family, and will make the program, your program, so much more successful. It's about being prepared and really setting the scene for success. The second module, Food Fun, and module 3, it's 2 parts of the one principle, really looking at the key nutritional bedrock for optimum health and how we can incorporate some great choices, lots of great recipe ideas, and just adding in some of these great foods simply and more regularly. And then after module 3, we take a week off to allow you to consolidate and experiment with all the new recipes and the foods and the strategies that we've discussed. The first half of the program is really content rich. There's a lot of information that's provided, so that week off will be good. And then module 4, we come back and have a really start off with a big kind of very powerful Q&A, answering any questions. But there's also going to be a Facebook forum that I create, which is another area for asking questions and for getting support. It's private, it's closed, it's just a very, very supportive environment, and really important part of the program too. So module 4 will talk about creating peace, not war, and this is more about setting the house up for a great routine, starting the morning off well, but the routine, really getting kids into bed and the night before, is probably as important as the morning, and really getting understanding of celebrating home cooked food, where food comes from, why it's so important, and making that whole thing about celebrating food and good nutrition, and making it a really integral part of the home, and also some tips for creating a bit more quickness in the kitchen and in the pantry. And then module 5, we move on to a healthy mind, healthy mum. It's that kind of whole gut-mind connection. There is as many neurons in the gut as there are in the brain, which is an amazing fact. But so that connection is really important. And so share some really simple strategies to nourish healthy minds. And then module 6, looking at crazy kids detox. So what else is going on in the home that we need to create a healthy family and healthy kids, and to zoom in on that and other areas as well. So that's the 5 core principles of the e-course. And the benefits will vary depending on your family and where your focus will be, but there will be results. It can be life-changing, as you've seen and heard from Yoels. My intention is to provide really good information and resources that are thought-provoking and guide you to making the best choices for you and your family. And to create a safe place for rich and open dialogue that will really enable real breakthroughs for you and your family. It is important to take your time. You're always going to have the materials available to you, so do what works for you. You can't go wrong. And as soon as you sign up, you'll have access to the Facebook page, the private Facebook page, and so the benefits really are very many and wide. And then, so that's my gift for joining the webinar today. It's valued over $160, but a free 45-minute consult for the first 4 people who sign up, and that's valued at $90. And then for 24 hours only, the e-course will run for a value of $425. So thanks so much for joining me today. It's been great having you on board, and for people who asked the questions. I'll send you an email after the call with details of this offer, and also where you can find the recording. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And if you've got any questions or you are interested in any of my other programs, just drop me an email. And I've enjoyed sharing this with you today. Thanks very much, and take care. We'll wrap up now. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Cappy. Bye.